Hello, Sacramento, California, and internet netizens of all stripes. Welcome back to the West Report. I'm your host, Tyler West. Today we're talking about something you might have noticed in your own experience in recent years, the trend towards multi-generational housing. And we're going to discuss why it is overall a good thing and some of the things that have led up to this becoming a trend. With prices for single-family homes soaring across the country, consolidating generations under one roof can mean increased purchase power for the family, which in turn can provide access to less competitive segments of the housing market, namely the higher end where the larger homes are. In a national study that was conducted not too long ago, I believe it was mid-2020, during the first wave of the virus, 15, I believe, % of home buyers stated that they bought multi-generational homes. And that's the highest share since the study was first conducted back in 2012. In the 8 months before the outbreak, only 11% had bought homes to live with multiple generations of family. So that's a considerable increase in interest and purchases of multi-generational homes. The most common cited reason for this was to bring aging parents into the home. And of no small concern was the isolation and spread of the coronavirus in the senior housing, senior living homes. It also reflects a trend towards remote work and a desire to have grandparents help with childcare. So these are two features of the trend that can't be overlooked. Seismic shifts in how families live and work are creating a surge of baby boom households with multiple generations now. I expect that trend is going to continue to increase once the 2021 report comes out. After years of slow growth, multi-generational living is clearly on the rise for folks who don't want to give up on their dreams of homeownership. And for those just tuning in, we're talking about multi-generational housing. We're going to have the broker of Franklin West Real Estate on in a few minutes, as well as Christy West, who does the finance and mortgage side of things. And they're going to be here to answer your questions. If you've got any questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll try to get you answers. Now, you can't bring up multi-generational homes without touching on the subject of ADUs, otherwise known as auxiliary dwelling units. This is a subject that came to my attention about a year ago at a local PCAR meeting. We had the Lincoln, I believe, something of economic development explain this. And for those who don't know or haven't heard of what an auxiliary dwelling unit is, it's a secondary home on the lot. So in the past, it was very cost prohibitive to have these structures on the property, mainly in California, due to the permitting required. But that's changed a little bit in the last 2 years or so. I believe as of January 2020, the state of California has relaxed the permitting requirements to put these secondary housing units on your home. And they've done so in a pretty big way. They enforce this two ways. They passed a law in the state of California requiring cities and counties to make a plan for relaxing their local restrictions on ADUs. And the other way is they passed a law promoting multiple dwelling units on a single property. So these two things in tandem kind of work together to encourage and enforce the consolidation of people into fewer lots. Now, it was almost as if it was done in anticipation of the pandemic. But be that as it may, that means the state is overlooking much of the permitting required. And I believe we're going to go into some of the details about that in a moment. So they relaxed the regulations and the cost to build an ADU. It's something that makes, by relaxing the permitting requirements, it makes the idea of building other dwelling units on a single property much more attractive, appealing, and cost-effective for you. We're probably going to do other live streams on the topic with more detail. I'd like to get that city planner from Lincoln on the show one of these days, because he was really good at explaining in detail how this works, what the benefits are to homeowners and for society at large. So far what we know, a statewide exemption ADU is an ADU of up to about 800 square feet. I seem to remember it was 750, but I might be misremembering. 16 feet in height, so that means more than adequate vertical space. And with 4 feet side and rear yard setbacks. And you can have 2 ADUs in California that fall within the provisions of these relaxed permitting requirements. So you can have 1 ADU up to 50% of the square footage of the main property, and they call it a junior ADU of up to 800 square feet. So as you think about this, consider you could bring multiple branches of your family all under one roof, with room to spare for grandma and grandpa, or maybe a student going through college. We can see that California is on the front lines of a trend towards consolidated living. And this is something that I noticed 2 years ago when I learned about the ADUs. I'm going to bring on my dad and broker for Franklin West Real Estate to answer some questions that I still have about this. Welcome, Dad.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, you bet. Well, you know a lot more about this than I do. So, what are the various types of accessory dwelling units, and can you can you validate the numbers I was explaining earlier about how big they can be?
Well, I really liked your introduction, letting folks know that we're reemerging into multi-generational housing, back from many decades of children growing up, getting jobs, usually away from their parents, and moving to different cities, different towns, different states, some even different countries. But because of certain things happening in the last 3, 4, 5 years here in California, especially the prices of homes accelerating upward, we are reemerging back to a place where families are moving in together for lots of reasons. A lot of it is strictly for financial reasons. There are basically 5 different kinds of ADUs. There's the detached ADU. We used to call them granny flats. I've sold hundreds of homes, of course, and many of them had second dwellings on the property. A lot of homes I've sold in the past over the last 30 years were big houses with a separate part of the home that actually has what we call an ADU, auxiliary dwelling unit, built into it. But back then we didn't call it that. It was just a home that had two living quarters, like with a kitchen, bathroom, living room, and bedroom, one small fraction of a big house. So here we are, we're moving back towards multi-generational across the nation, especially here in California, one of the highest priced home markets there is.
What percentage of recent clients in the last 2 or 3 years have you had for whom multi-generational living was a big factor in their new home purchase?
Well, it's up there. It's probably about 15-20% now. Whenever I talk to a client, past client, new client, family or friend, whoever's looking to buy their next property, and I perceive it to be possibly 30 to 40% here in the next 2 years. That's how important it is for families to stick together with these high-priced properties, and other reasons, as you mentioned, as we age, our parents are moving in with us. As I think I mentioned last podcast, my mother-in-law lives with us. And it's wonderful that we're able to take care of her and her not having to live in a different location.
In a senior care home.
Yeah. So to answer your question, you asked what kinds of ADUs are there. There are multiples of ADUs. There's the obvious one, the mother-in-law quarters, mother-in-law plot, they call it. That's a separate home from your house. It's detached, not from the house. So for those of you who are chimed in here at the West report here, if you've got some land and you're looking for a second source of income, you're looking to bring some family members, children who maybe right now are in college, or they just haven't worked long enough or not making enough money. Maybe they've gotten even married and have a child or two. They can't quite afford to go out and buy one of these high-priced California properties. Build them an ADU. And as long as they're working, they can pay for it, right?
And on that point, offering to bring a family member closer to home by allowing them to build an ADU on your property is a lot more accessible. It makes homeownership, or at least the ability to have a roof over your head and a dwelling space, a lot more affordable and achievable for them.
Correct. Their other choice would be what? To go out and rent something. And as we all know, rents are sky high, and they can go up as much as 10% per year in Northern California and most of California. In other states, I'm not quite so sure what their restrictions are, but 10% increase per year when your job might be only increasing 2 to 5%, that takes a hit after a couple of years.
Great point.
So,
if somebody finds it a benefit to build an ADU on their property, then how would they get started?
Well, the first thing they should do is call me and you, and we go out and take a survey of their property. I'm not a financial advisor anymore. I used to be. They should pass anything that they do in the future by their CPA, financial advisor, if they want, their banker, anybody else that they respect that's professional in the financial realm. But that's how you get started. You contact somebody who can give you the basics. Main things are, if I can help you decide whether, with the cost of the ADU, and I pretty much know what they cost. I know what the fees are going to be, pretty close to them. This is all work, research that people can do too, but it could take them a long time, and they can just have me come out and be glad to work with them and help them and guide them. And they may decide that it's a benefit to them to do that. For example, if I show you that you can build a 700 square foot additional dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, same thing, mother-in-law quarters, and the cost to build is a couple $100 a square foot. When we're selling homes at over $300 to $350 a square foot and more, it might make sense for the young couple to help finance, or the parents, if they can, either cash out or come in with additional money. And Christy could talk more about those things because that's her forte and not mine, certainly. But in the future, if the children, for example, are living in that ADU and making payments on it and actually take ownership of it with their parents. Again, that can be done through contract or just through family. In the future, when the folks have the big house, then now they have an ADU. When they go to sell, that ADU could make them anywhere from 40 to 60% more money.
That's a great point, because you're increasing the square footage of the livable space on the property.
Right?
It actually increases the value of the overall property.
Exactly.
And that brings up something else that shouldn't be left out of this discussion. You can rent out these ADUs for income. These can be income producing, whether it's 800 square feet or 1,600 square feet, they can be income producing for the landowner.
Exactly right. I just wanted to finish up on your first question of what are the different types. So we talked about the external. Lots of homes I've sold in the past already had the ADU built into them. They didn't call that an ADU because before 2017, 2019, they were just a big house that had two separate kitchens and separate living environments. And they were designed, without calling them ADUs, within the build out of the big home. There's also attachments, homes that you can build in your house. If you have an existing home, 1 kitchen, 4 bedrooms, living room, family room, 3 bathrooms, that kind of thing, you can add to that current home if you've got the space. All this has to be done through your county. Every county in the state is different and has different requirements. But if you got enough space, then you can just add on to your home, again, using the same numbers. These are just rough general numbers. If you build 750 square foot home for $150,000 to $200,000, but it adds value of $350,000 to $400,000, but you're not going to take advantage of that value until you sell your home in the future. Now you've got a separate quarters adjoined to your home. Usually there's one door that can lock between the additional dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, and the main house. So we have an external building, ADU. Now we have an attached, basically internal dwelling unit. You can also take an existing garage. Some people have
right.
for like RVs and boats and all that. Let's just say you have a regular 2 or 3 car garage. Let's say you want to build a 300 to 400 square foot dwelling unit in your garage. I recommend first you take a look to see if the elevation is high enough over the garage to build above the garage, so that you maintain the safety of your cars and the protection of your cars. If your home is like that, then you can build your ADU. Again, it's going to be a little smaller, not the 750 typically, 750, but 300, 400, 500 square foot above your garage, and put a full kitchen, bathroom, little living room, and a bedroom. And for most family members coming in to live with you, or you can rent it out to strangers if you wish. You can have a separate door or entry point coming in through a stairway, either through the garage or externally. So now we got the garage internal, and we have the garage built above the garage. Those are two different concepts. Of course, you have to get passed through the county for that. And the last one would be your basement conversion. For those few of you in California who have a basement, if you got a 7-foot ceiling, I prefer an 8 or higher ceiling. You can build, 150 square foot, a 300 square foot, a 1,000 square foot. Once you go through the application and process through the county, you're allowed to build out your basements in most cases in California now with the new regulations, and we can cover those 4 bills later in detail.
Why don't we do that now? Great explanation of the different kinds of ADUs that are available to people.
Right.
There's a lot of options there. I've seen most of them in my life, and they all have attractive qualities, depending on who you're trying to accommodate and what the purpose for building the ADU out is. But I think people who are considering doing this for themselves, and I'm betting there's a lot of folks out there for whom this has been on their mind, we have family members, you know, the uh, the details would be very interesting to them. So do you have, can you explain what some of the parameters are for building these out?
Well, you touched base on the recent changes in the law that now has allowed folks to think about being able to build out ADUs on their property. Up until January 2020, you were allowed to, through the common means of dealing with the county and the insurmountable fees that you have to pay for everything. It used to be 15,000 when I got in the business to get all permits and fees. Then with the 35,000 and the 65,000.
Wow.
Recently, working with clients, now it's way over 120,000 for all the fees, and not even counting school bonds and things like that. So in January 2020, this actually took place in 2019. It was recognized in the state of California, like other states, that we just don't have enough residences for folks to live in. And we're not talking about people moving in. We're just talking about people who are here and having children, and they're growing up, and they have jobs here, and they're in college. So just basic. And we went through 2 or 3 years, 4 years maybe, where builders were not building out, partly because the fees are too ding dang high, and homes were suppressed from 2007 through 2013, 14, even 15. They started to move back up a little bit, but it wasn't until 3 years ago that we started to see this huge increase in our value of homes. So now the builders are building homes right now, but it's a little bit late, and we need homes in 2019. So they passed these 4 bills in 2020 of January. The first bill is called the Bill 881, and what that did is when you build a house, you cannot build yet what's called setbacks. Some folks have 20-foot setbacks. Sorry about that. Some folks have 10 feet setbacks, but on bigger lots, it might be 100 feet. It might be 50 feet. So they removed the setback regulation as long as you are 4 feet from the fence, or if it's an external, from the house.
Okay.
Then, sorry about that. My phone went off. So that bill deregulated the setback rules. And setback rules are staunched. I mean, they would not allow you, without spending thousands of dollars, to try to change any setback rule on any existing property. So that's been changed. Now, if you've got enough land on your property, as long as you're 4 feet away from the property line to your neighbor, so the setback is now 4 feet. So that's a biggie.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, and then they came out with so there's no more maximum, minimum setbacks for folks when they're going to build out their ADU. Then they came out with the Senate Bill 13, where there's impact fees. In other words, if you're in Auburn and you want to add another building to your 5 acres, they used to have these impact fees, environmental impact fees mainly. How is it going to affect the local area, the community, the Longhorn Beetle Path, the creek that's on, all that stuff? So they didn't eliminate that, but they greatly decreased the requirements in impact fees. They did delete or reduce to zero the impact fee itself, but still, if you're going to infringe on some wetlands and things like that, those rules still apply. So it's great that we got rid of a fee. Basically, what I tell people, what I've learned is, on an average, your fees to build a property now are about $15,000 to $20,000 less. That, in many cases, would not allow someone to think about building another 750 square foot property on their
yeah. That's a lot more obtainable.
Right.
I think everybody can agree $20,000 in savings is a lot more obtainable.
Exactly. And then they had where if you build out, another bill was regulations for garages. If you take out your garage or build above your garage, how is that going to impact the parking situation in your community? Well, if you build out your garage, it's going to impact, because then you're going to have one, two, or three less cars in your normal one, two, or three garage. And they used to have strict requirements that if you built into your garage a mother-in-law quarters or additional living space, then you have to build another external building to put your toys and your cars in. That's been eliminated. You can build out your 3-car garage now, and yes, they're going to subtract, an appraiser would, $15,000, $5,000 per bay, today's money. I know that for a fact. I used to be an appraiser, and I just went through this with an appraiser who did that to one of my clients. They built into one of their bays. They get the benefit of the build out, but they got subtracted $5,000 because the garage no longer can facilitate a car. So with that said, it still makes sense to build out in a garage if you need the additional space for a rental income or to provide for a family member.
From what I understand, one of the other things they relaxed is the definition of livable space. Garages are not considered livable space. At least they weren't. But now, I believe the requirements to make it, fit the definition of livable space have also been relaxed. Do you know about that?
It's pretty much the same as it was. It does have to have
really?
tied. Yeah, you have to be tied to the septic. The septic, if it's in the home or even if it's external, your septic has to be large enough for the extra bedroom, because they go by size of septic goes by the number of bedrooms. Why that is, I have no clue. But nothing else is really considered number of bedrooms. So if you add another one or two bedrooms, your septic has to provide for that. And maybe in some counties, they're not requiring you to take out the septic for a 4-bedroom house and put it in a septic for a 6-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house. Perhaps that's what you're referring to.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what was coming to mind. Who wants to put a bathroom in their garage? Who knows?
The livable ADU, and it's permitted, it adds value to your home. You definitely have to have to be a requirement as an ADU to have that.
Okay.
It's a auxiliary dwelling unit. Dwelling means it's self reliant, meaning you have a kitchen, and that could just be a little counter kitchen. You have a bathroom that could be a toilet and a sink. Not even have to have probably a bath or a shower, but most likely people would put in a shower in a small bathroom. And then at least a bedroom, if not a bedroom and a living room.
So for it to be considered livable space, for it to be added to your square footage when you go to sell the home, it has to fit the definition. It has to check all the boxes.
Absolutely. And in the county, when you apply, first thing you do is, besides having me out there to take a look to see if it's even possible for you to do this, when you, and I would guide you to the application, when you complete the application, and by the way, this is a new law, the owner of the house is not the one that has to apply for the ADU. You can have your parents do it. You can have your children apply for the ADU. You can have investors apply for the ADU. It doesn't matter who does. As long as they can build a property, living quarters on the property that's safe and goes through the county regulations, it performs all of the functions of a living home, then you can have anybody, I can't say pay for it, but they can apply for it.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That's really good info. Thanks for sharing your insights with us. When it comes to obtaining a homestead with ADU, or without an ADU, maybe they want to build one on it. What are some of the considerations that people have to think about?
When you say a homestead, you mean adding on a second and third property onto?
Right.
Well, they have to think about, number one, can they afford it? That's something that Christy can talk to the folks watching about. Does it make sense to do it? What are the reasons for building an ADU or two ADUs? And you mentioned both of them. You can build an auxiliary dwelling unit and a junior dwelling unit, meaning typically in Placer County, El Dorado County, Sacramento County, they allow you to build up to half the size of the main house. And if you have a 2,000 square foot main house, then your accessory auxiliary dwelling unit could go up to 1,000 feet. And that can vary, and you can put in a request for changing that to maybe even 1,200 square feet.
Hey, if you've got the space on your land, it's a great way to pick your neighbors.
Exactly. If you like your children and your parents, and they're your neighbors, build it for them. If you don't get along so much, then you can
rent them out for income.
You can invite strangers in, as long as if it's for income, you created yourself a net income source, and after the mortgage is paid off on the ADU and the junior ADU, then it's residual income for the rest of your life. It's a great retirement plan, especially if you get multiple lots.
Well, if anybody watching this right now wants to learn more, feel free to contact us. You can contact me, Tyler, at franklinwest.net, or you can contact Dad, Richard, at franklinwest.net, or call us at 916-761-8452, and we'll get you taken care of. If you're looking for, whether you're looking for some land, which could accommodate a house with several ADUs on it, or you want to see what is currently available in our in inventory right now, we can help you find that perfect home with ADUs or the possibility thereof for you. So here to chat with us about being able to afford these and the finance side of things, I'm going to bring on Christy. Thank you for joining us today, Dad.
Thank you, Tyler.
And we'll look forward to having you on the next one.
Thank you, folks, for chiming in.
Welcome.
Hello.
Nice to have you back.
It's good to be here. I've got all kinds of information. I'm sure people have a lot of questions regarding financing.
Well, Dad's a tough act to follow, so I expect a lot.
I'll see what I can
pressure. So here to talk with us about being able to finance and afford ADUs, Christy is a mortgage loan officer with Best Cap Funding, and she is really good at helping people check all the boxes and be able to qualify for the financing they need to buy the home they want. So, Christy, let's talk about the finance angle for multi-generation units.
Great. Well, let's start with there are some restrictions if you're purchasing a property that has, let's say, a regular built house, and let's say it has a manufactured house on it. You wouldn't think it would be a problem. But as far as financing those type of properties with regular Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or VA or FHA, they don't like that type of scenario. So there is alternative financing for those type of properties. So if you run across something like that and you're interested in it, you can reach out to your current lender, or you can always reach out to me because I have a plethora of information to share with you. If you don't have anybody to talk with, I'd be more than happy to help you with any questions. If it has a second structure on it, that is what we call stick built. In other words, it's not manufacturing, it's actually built on the property, then that's not a problem, provided it was permitted. If it wasn't permitted, then they just don't count the value on that structure, but it doesn't mean that you can't get it permitted. So that's one of the things that the new law that came out, stating that if you have an ADU built on your property, but you never got it permitted because you weren't able to at the time, but now the county is allowing you to come around and get that property permitted, getting that
Yeah.
ADU permitted. So
So
that's
the
nice.
permitting the permitting is a lot less stringent than it was.
Correct.
If you want to add the ADU to the value of your property, you still got to get it permitted, is
Correct.
what I heard you saying. But
Correct.
and while not getting something permitted may be appealing to some people, ultimately, if you plan to resell that property and get the maximum value out of it, you're going to want to get it permitted. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct. And since you're putting the value into the property, you kind of, if you plan on selling it, you're going to want to have that permitted so you can benefit from the value that it brings to the property. And if you want to finance it, because that's the thing, is when you're buying these type of properties and sellers are selling them, they want to maximize on, the most value they can get from these properties. So, and they're
So, sorry, go ahead.
no, they're very desirable. More and more, I'm seeing people really looking for that type of property that's got an accessory dwelling unit, if not to have their in-laws live there, or children that are trying to save for a down payment. They just can't get ahead. They can participate and help, by paying rent or whatever, and then save money for their next house. It's very highly desirable and needed.
Do you see a lot of interest in ADUs as income producing units that they can rent out?
Yes, yes. Anything that can help with income, especially in the high prices that we're seeing recently, with there's just the lack of inventory. It's all about supply and demand. And so right now there's a lot of demand and there's just not enough supply. And so the builders, like Richard was talking about, they weren't doing a lot of building in the last 10 years. I mean, well, the last 2 years they've been trying to build, but haven't been able to keep up with the demand. And so that's why housing, I think, is really, the prices have gone up quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
also the fact that a lot of people can work from home, which is a real benefit. So you don't have that commute. And so now people are moving, outside their area of where they would normally have to stay within because of their job. And so a lot of people, because they're working from home, they may need like an additional dwelling just to have their office. So they're not in the main house where,
Sure. Yeah.
so we're seeing that too.
How do we so if somebody who's interested in building an ADU, maybe they've got the space on their property for it, what are their routes to getting it paid for?
That's a really good question. So let's say you have the existing home and there's some equity in there. You can do an equity line of credit, pull some cash out and pay for it that way. Or possibly refinance, pull cash out instead of doing a first and second combination. So those would be the two ways that you could finance it if you don't have, the financing. A lot of people don't have, $50,000, $75,000 laying around. But so I would say just either refinance or if you have a great first mortgage on your home right now with a low interest rate, just do an equity line of credit.
What would you say are the preferred types of ADUs and preferred types of ADUs for people who want to bring like a grandparent closer to home, or a child closer to home, but they like the idea of having a separate space for them?
Well, there's a lot of different options. They're coming out with all these new technologies as far as building out ADUs that are very desirable. I mean, you can get a kit home, which basically is like a prefab where it's already pre-cut and pre-measured kit home where you pay to have it put up. You get a contractor and you do all the proper, uh, you know, um, things with the county as far as permits and that type of thing. Or you can just do what's a regular, what we call a stick built, just a regular small
Your
home,
standard
your
structure.
standard structure. If you get a manufactured home, um, you'll have some issues with the resale. Just be aware of that
Oh
because,
yeah.
yeah, so that's just something to be aware of. You can get a manufactured home where, as long as it's on a permanent foundation, but there's still some issues with financing those type of homes. Like if you were to go to sell that, as far as financing it through the regular conventional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type conventional loan or FHA or VA, they have restrictions on having modular homes along with a regular home on it for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that reasoning is. Doesn't mean you can't get financing. You just probably have to go to an alternative financing. So just note that if you're considering putting a modular home on there.
And
So
when you say alternative financing, do you mean private party?
correct. So it's not a government loan.
Okay. Okay. And that goes back to one of the points of this live stream from the beginning, which is that the when you combine the purchasing power of multiple parties, then the ideal living scenario can be a lot more achievable for all of you.
Yes, yeah, and they've lightened up a lot on um, ADUs that weren't permitted. If I hadn't mentioned that before, so check with getting if you have a current situation where you have a home and there was an ADU put on there and it wasn't permitted. They've lightened up a lot on getting those permitted, so you can count the value of that structure when you do go to sell it if you sell it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I could see this trend making land more appealing and valuable too.
Yeah, it is. Certainly, if you were to go and let's say build a house, you could finance the ADU in at that time as well. Might be an option with a construction to perm loan. Um, and, if you're buying bare land and then if it's multifamily generational, then you just all finance it together and figure out how you want to do ownership as far as joint ownership or tenants in common, but that's getting onto another subject. But
Yeah, we'll
it's
talk about
possible.
kit homes at some point in the future too,
Yeah.
because that's a really interesting and exciting topic.
Well, there's also the tiny homes. I mean, tiny homes became really popular,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
those are on wheels, and so you don't really have to get permits for those, except for maybe hooking up to a septic. And it's, or the other thing I'm seeing is people getting RVs and putting in, a separate septic. So there's all kinds of ideas that you can to do. Of course, we can't finance things on wheels because they have a tendency to go
Right.
away. So that's not really going to give the property any more value, but
But
it's an option.
if you can't tell, we're all pretty creative around here. And Christy, I'm sure you would love to share your creative ideas about how people can afford these things and make it happen. Right? We all got to get
Absolutely.
a little bit of creative in these times. So it's so you want to know what your options are, and Christy's really good at explaining what she sees as your options. If anyone would like to talk to her privately, why don't you give them your contact information?
Absolutely. The best way to reach me is on my cell phone, and that phone number is 916 995 9324. Or you can reach out to me via email, and that is Christy, and that's spelled CRISTI at bestcapfunding.com. And if you send me an email or send me a text, I'd be more than happy to share what's called an ADU handbook with you that might answer
Ooh,
a lot of questions. So please reach out to us. We're here to help. If you have any questions, we'd love to help you.
wonderful. Hey, thank you for joining us again on this latest episode of the West Report. We're gonna call it for now, but we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.